Hey guys, so welcome back. We're going to get back into this. This is part 3 of this RCA, and we're making some work in here in the capacitor replacements, and I'm just going to go ahead and get started on that. Okay, I've got this 47 in instead of the 05 in place. I pulled off this little capacitor here that goes to the switch that was on this position. I'm talking about the switch back here, program switch. I've decided that in order to get back down in there after dealing with this, I'm going to go ahead and take the volume control out so I can get to those connections without putting undue stress on everything and trying to burn my way through there. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, so we're just about to the point of maximum disruption. Alright, so I got this one just kind of not even tacked in, just folded in here so I remember where it goes, and kind of, I'm going to make that probably the last solder connection. I'll make this one first, I think. This is still loose. I've got on here the things that are going to be connecting to that terminal post on the switch. Like I said, I got some of them taped off with white. These are going to go to the floating ground when I mount it. I've already started removing the leads for the capacitors. Get this fellow out of there. He measured okay, actually. Well, he didn't seem to cause any hum. Let's put it that way. I'll try to get this thing out. We did. That capacitor is still good. I'll just leave this bracket with it. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is go in and get set up for mounting the fuse block right here. I'm going to go right in here, and I've got a spot marked off to drill that hole, so we'll get on it. I'm going to go ahead and get that in and go ahead and drill the other hole. I haven't marked it yet, and get that in. Then I'll start putting all this back together again, refolding the onion. So 5/32. I've got a number 6 screw to put in there. About 64th clearance, I think. Started that off with the 5/64 just to pilot. Okay, so what we're going to have the fuse block, and we're going to have it go through the chassis, and I'm going to have a star washer for lock, and then I'm going to have a nut, and I'll probably put some epoxy on it just to hold it, or enamel, like fingernail polish, something like that. Yeah. That'll work good. I may rough it up and put a dab of epoxy underneath it just so it doesn't want to swivel around. It's no big deal. I can do that. Actually, I just don't think it needs it though. When I tighten that down, it's not moving. Okay, let me locate the one for the capacitor type terminal strip. Okay, for where I'm going to put the terminal strip will be right in here, like right around so. And so in order to drill the hole from the other side, what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo one screw here and see if I can just swing this scale away. Let these bulb holders stay hold of it. Maybe it'll keep it from flopping around, and that'll allow me to get that out of the way, and I can drill through. So that's what I'm going to try. Loosen this other one. Just swing out of the way. One way or the other. Oh, it's putting tension on the on the spring. That's the problem. Okay, I'm going to disconnect it. Okay, we'll see if that'll just swing out of the way. Will you just swing out of the way? Don't want to. Is it out of the way enough? It's too bad I'm going to have to re-string this thing again. Oh well. I did it once, I can do it again. The things you do to recap things. Okay, that gets me access. I'm good. I'm going to put it right about there. I think that's going to be just fine. That's where it's going to be. I can deburr that just a little bit more, but that's going to be just fine. Okay. Perfect. Okay, that'll go in a little later because, as you can see, it's blocking some access. I need to get this other one back in here. So I'll put that in a little bit later, but we're getting there. So now I think I'm ready to start looking at running the power. Well, but first I need to reconnect this and then get my, so these grounds are going to now run over to here on this post right here. So everything that's white will be connected up over to here. So that includes this resistor will come over to here. So this line right here I'll reroute just a little bit and it'll go there by itself, and I'll have to put an extension on this one to come over, and then of course this capacitor lead here will run over to that point there, and we may have to extend that one as well to get over there, but I'd like to tie it on right there, and then I'll tie these two together. Okay, so I've got a nice what I think is a nice looking cord. It's polarized. And so I will feed this through. I'm going to be putting a strain relief in here, the factory one that was there. And the longest lead goes here and the shortest lead will come over here. So that gives me plenty of room there. Might be kind of tight. We'll see. Okay, I want it to be kind of like right in here, didn't I? Well, that took about another 5 seconds. I just realized I had the flat oriented 90 degrees out. It was on the side, and that just kind of snapped right in. And it's in there. It's in there good. Okay. All right, so let the rest of the work begin. I'll find out which one of these is hot, and it'll find its way right there. I'll bring it back when I get some more progress done. Okay, got the 247s filling in for the 80. And that looks pretty good. On this I've also got the jumper, so that the ground, floating ground, comes from here, jumps across to here, which is where I'm going to be tying in all the things from the other former post connected into this point right here. And I'm just going to put some shrink on that to hold it steady. Okay. That's plenty. All right. So that'll go there. Okay, so I thought I'd just share where I am right now before I'm getting ready to finish this up. I've got the two 47s in here for the 80. They're tied in. There's the 47 for the 50 tied in. I've got the two negatives basically for that one and this grouping coming here. You'll see that blue wire back behind, it comes over to the positive side of this cluster here, and it joins up to that brown wire, which is where the 80 was connected originally. Okay, so that's where that is. Okay, I've changed out that resistor that's there, and the one that's got the Teflon piping on it. And I've got the other leads tied on going to this ground. They don't have them soldered yet. And so now I'm getting ready to kind of close stuff up. I've got the power lead comes in. I've got the hot comes over here and is tied off. We snap the fuse into here. I'll have a lead come off of here. That'll go to, see, that's the hot lead. I've got this in the wrong place. Ugh. Glad I talked it through before I went any further. This other lead goes to this ground over here. And then the lead comes from here and goes to that point. And then from the other, sorry, this point here. And then from the other side of the switch, it'll go over to back over here. I've got this lead here. This is the capacitor that goes through that black shield. So I will feed this when the time comes. I'll feed that through if I can. And it'll tie off against the ground post back here. I'm going to have a lot of simultaneous soldering to do, and then of course over the top of it the replacement for that one will go in. So it's a mess. I had a lot to try to keep in my mind, and like I say, I already noticed right there I made a mistake, so I got to fix that. Okay, just kind of show you where I am here. I'm almost getting ready to close it all up. I've got kind of things hanging all over everything. So I've got the two 47s in to act for the 80. It's in place. They're connected to a blue wire that you might not be able to see snaking through there. It ties into the ground, sorry, the brown, and goes up here to where it was before, up there. 47 taking the place of the 50 is tied directly onto here. The ground from that, or the negative lead, comes up and joins the negatives from these two. There's a jumper, as I mentioned, that goes around from behind here to here. And then this is the new floating ground bus connection. So here I've got the two 150, the 150 capacitor resistor with the spaghetti tubing on it here. I've got the lead that comes off. That's, I think it's part of the filament line. I've got another lead here. This is the neutral that comes in from the wall. I need to push this shrink tube down on there and shrink it. And then I've got the lead that comes over here and delivers the negative to the back post on the volume control, which is right back here. Okay. Now what I've got is I've got the capacitor here that goes back to that back strip. It just needs to be soldered on that last post back there where the ground is. And this is the one that goes through the coiled up tubing shield that goes up here to the detector. And I'll try to slip that down over that. And then this goes onto this point here. So I got a lot of balls in the air all at once. Here's where the hot lead comes in. We'll go to the fuse, which will go here. This lead comes off, comes back around, goes to the back side here. There you see it's tied to this switch. And then from here I'll go to the CL90 and then run a lead from here over to where this needs to go. So I'll probably want to do that before I get all this closed back up, right? All right, that's where we are. Okay, this ought to be fun. So you can see this is just a wire, single strand, wrapped up on something about the size, a little bit larger than a pencil. And then, of course, it's grounded on only one end because you don't end up with a loop or a weird issue there. And then you wrap it with electrical tape, and then the thing's up inside of there. So let's get this back on. Get something Is that exposing a conductor? Oh, that'll be okay. All right, so let's see if we can get this up in here. Then once I do, I got to get this wrapped around that. This was wrapped like around all the items down there on that ground connection. I'll see if I can maybe get it threaded through right, but we'll see. Okay, and the capacitor lead should be long enough. We'll see how it goes. Okay, will it go? Yes. Keep going. There we go. It's starting to come out the other side. Okay. So what I need to do, before I go down too far, is get this tied off down here on the ground so it gets its shielding connection. Alright, let's get all those joints connected and soldered up in there. I know you can't see anything. There we go. There's the mess. Make sure that solder doesn't touch the cabinet, because that's the floating ground. Nope. That nut there is holding it off far enough, so that's good. These deep chassis are kind of a pain to work on, you know. It's like you're having to do things in layers. More so than usual. Before I take it much further, I think I'm going to clean that control. Okay, I'll tighten that up in a bit to make sure everything looks okay. Get the CL90 on here, so we go through the switch, and then the out of the switch goes to the CL90, and then I'm going to have an extension from here that'll tie into the CL90 in here, and I'll get it into position where I want it. But for right now, I've got it tacked in there, so I don't have to deal with soldering it right now. Okay, so this guy here comes all the way. Do I want this one to come across the top or underneath? Looks like it wants to go underneath, huh? So this is an example. Maybe I wanted to solder that before I did this connection, but we'll see how we do. Let me put a little bit of shrink on that, or not shrink, but some tubing on that. Okay, so I've got that capacitor that's inside this shield tied off to the back down there to the detector tube. Got the power lead hooked up. All I got to do is solder this connection back up. Got the CL90 in place. So the power comes in, the hot lead comes in, comes to the fuse, goes through the fuse. Still need to tighten that down. And then comes from here, goes around to the back side of the switch down there at the bottom. Comes across the switch, comes to the CL90, then comes through the lead and goes over here to the rectifier tube, which is where it was. This is folded back over. I think now all I need to do is get this back down where it goes. We'll replace that one, of course. Goes to pin 3 of the audio tube here. And then I'll solder up this, pop a fuse in here, and we'll be ready to try our first power up and see how we do. Normally I like to just do a little bit of section at a time and then test as I go, but man, this thing, these deep chassis are kind of a pain, you know, because everything is just kind of overlapping each other, and it's just really kind of, you almost have to have a sequence, and it almost has to be taken apart and put back together again all at once. So not my favorite way to do it for sure. But anyway, let me get this tied back down and get this soldered up, and then we will be ready to do that. So hang on, I'll be there in just a minute. Okay, so I took care of this capacitor finally at last. That goes across the top and goes into here. That's all done. I'm going to position a little bit away from that high watt resistor. It's fine. I'm ready to do the last solder connection, which is to tie together all of the floating grounds. And then we are ready to go to test power up and see how bad we messed up. I'll probably do a visual check one more time. And that, my friends, should do it. Alright, let's go through this. I'll verify the hot lead in just a minute. Need to tighten this down. But the line cord comes into here, goes through the fuse, comes from here, goes to the switch here in the back, comes through the switch, goes to a CL90, comes from here and goes to the rectifier. The leads that had been tied here have been brought over to this location. That includes this guy. I guess I can go ahead and remove that little piece of white tape if I can. On that guy. And then the capacitors, I got that one tied off here. That's the 50. Comes back around to this ground point. We have this ground point here. There's a jumper that goes between these two in the back. And then this is the positive, ties off to a blue lead that comes back, ties the brown, comes up to here. Got this little capacitor that goes to the end. We got a capacitor that runs through the tube to here. We got one in the back that goes back to a location that ties into the green from here. I put fader lube, not fader lube, but F5 fader spray on this. We'll see if that's okay. And we've restrung it again. I think we're about ready to go. Another thing I did was I went in there and I tried to, on the condenser coil, there was a couple of, I was worried about the shorting. Went in there and kind of pulled one aside a little bit. I think that might have been it. So we'll check it and we'll see if that's what it is. If not, we'll keep working on it. Okay, I need to tighten this down. So we're ready to put a fuse in it. And that's not going anywhere, guys. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop a fuse in there. I'm going to put in a 1/2 amp slow blow, and we'll see if that works. Especially since I've got that thermistor in there now, it probably will be fine. That's a 5 amp. Hang on. Or the package says 500 milliamps. Makes you feel like you're getting more value with 500 milliamps, right? Okay, there we go. Okay, let's go to power up here. Let's check to make sure that we've got the polarized plug hooked up correctly here. So what I'm going to do is hook up to the, I'm in continuity mode. Okay, so what I'm going to do is hook up to the fuse, which should be the line input. So if I go to this cord, the narrow blade is line. Good. The common neutral is here. Okay, so that's wired up correctly. Okay, I'm ready to try plugging this thing in. Let's see what we get. Okay, so there's the plug. Transformer is off. 3X down. Bulb is in the circuit. We're going to see the voltage come up here. And power's on. Got the speaker hooked up over here. And let's go. 30 volts. Watching the dim bulb over here, you might be able to see it if it were to glow. It's kind of in the shadow for you, so I'm thinking you might be able to see it. Okay. 50 volts. I do have a 1/2 amp fuse in here. And let's see, we are pulling 111 amps. Okay, let's go up to 70 volts. And we'll look at the bulbs. I've got a little bit of glow on the bulbs on the dial face. There's 90. I'm moving 150 milliamps. I've got glow on the rectifier tube and the audio output tube. So the series string is working. Here comes the sound.
Had those trains under contract and was able to divert those ships to Europe to really help Europe shore up some stockpiles.
Okay, we're going to go up to 100 volts.
The United States certainly could be able to
Text you. This week, congratulations taxpayers, you paid for another bailout. This week, President Biden signed a $36 billion check to rescue union workers for the Central State Pensions Fund. If people don't take responsibility for their own financial planning, could this affect you by you losing your own job? The watchdog on Wall Street, Chris Markowski, explains on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts.
Hyperbole is the worst, most awful form of language ever.
Makes you the hero of every purchase.
Let's see if I still have a short at the end of the travel. No. I got in there with my fingernail and straightened out one of the blades. It must have got injured while I was moving the tuning condenser around.
What's in your wallet?
Turn to black. See capital one.
Boy, there's some distant stations in there. I don't know what those are.
Rated emotional responses.
this is to dock that then they can get overseas.
Move to someone he was familiar with. It happens
And really skyrocketing costs.
Well, you know, Jason, we did interview Phyllis, who is the CEO of...
Okay, it sounds like it's working great. I'm going to leave it running for a while, just kind of let it burn in a little bit, hopefully not literally, and we'll see how it does. I may go back and check some voltages later. I'll let you know if I find anything interesting. And then the next thing is maybe just go through and touch up the alignment, make sure it's okay since we changed out all the caps. But we'll just take a quick check on the alignment and see if it's all right, and then we'll be looking at the case. So I let this play for many hours last night, and I've left it playing for many hours today. And during that time I took the memory card in, downloaded it, and just reviewed how everything was going and so forth, make sure I had everything recorded. And I didn't really notice it so much in live at the time, but when I was listening to the recording I was hearing that hum again. Hear that hum? And it doesn't really go away when I turn the volume down. So here's the... Turn the volume up. That turned down, that hum is still there. Hear it? Now, so I came in and did some experimentation, like what is the deal with the hum? So you remember I had a similar issue with one of the radios. I think it was the Starlight. And so I went in and tried kind of what I did on that one, where I just took like an electrolytic and put it across this to see if it would take the hum out. It didn't seem to have any effect on it. Okay, so I got to looking at the fact that what we're getting here is something to do with the chassis. Now granted, you get interference from my body getting close to this, but so I got to thinking about, okay, let's go back to our little capacitor here, a 0.1. Okay, so I put in a Y2 in that application. The one I put in is a 0.01, and you may remember I did a little experimentation on the Starlight showing that the 0.01 and the 0.1 didn't seem to make any difference, but I went ahead and put the 0.1 in. In this case, I thought, well, let me try that again. So I have some of these I've had these for quite a while. 0.1 Y2s. They're 300 volt. They're pretty good size, and got some clip leads. And so you can kind of look at the size of these. These are Vichy. There you go. You can see it. Y2. Maybe you can see that. I'll circle it. Anyway, so I tried putting another one of these in parallel around that, and I really didn't get any improvement that I could really tell. So let's put this one in. So it's going to go basically on either side of that resistor. It did make it go away completely. But I think that's a big enough improvement. I'm going to put this one in place of that one. So I'm going to get that changed out. I'll bring it back. Okay, that didn't take long. So we've got the Y2 and a 0.1 microfarad in there, and that fits just fine. And it's below the surface like everything else is. And yeah, I think everything is going to be good to go. Alright, we'll plug this in, and it is plugged in. Let's see how we do. 120 volts. Let's see if it sounds any better. I guess I didn't take it all away, and I guess I don't expect that, but just, you know, cleaned up some. At least we put the right value in. This one was seemed to be okay for the starlight, but this one still had some residual hum. That is thunder you hear outside. Okay.
8 targets, 7 receptions, 80 yards.
There's hum there, but it's really low.
6 targets, 5 receptions, 88 yards. Aaron Lacey, 3 for 2 yards. Three receptions, 8 yards.
Jonathan Savage, Fox News.
And back in the States, Twitter is facing a lot.
You hear the lightning static in the background.
Reporting that the landlord of the office filed a lawsuit last week.
Okay, I'm going to let this play for a while and see how it sounds.
The company owes over $136,000 to them.
Well, I've been working on the alignment, and I got the alignment, I think, pretty well done, except it's a little bit difficult to get done.
It's that first step towards achieving financial independence via real estate investing.
You hear that?
I've known Steve Davis for over 15 years now. I've watched him teach thousands of people on how to invest.
Silver mica disease, I'm afraid.
States to retirement via those investing.
I've had this playing for probably about 12 hours or so, and it's just now starting.
In the country, he's right here in Houston, and he can be yours.
Now, we had some thunderstorms in the area today. It could possibly be them, but I don't think so.
To get a free ticket to one of their free sample classes. Or
I'll tell you what I do love. Here's a cool moment at the end of every football game usually. If they show it, sometimes they show it, sometimes they don't. You'll have people ugly with the A-team. We're showing you the good, the bad, the ugly.
So you don't hear it now.
Good, the bad. The NFL is okay. Then
at the Pine Box, he's the owner. To be sure that he walks me through
gone
that
now.
process, and that I am prepared for the funeral, and that I get the
I've done this a
quality
couple of
I
times
seek
now,
without
and it seems to
breaking
reappear.
the
So I'm going to be
budget.
watching
Because
this,
it's a very
and we'll
difficult
see.
thing.
But
No one
I'm
wants
afraid
to
we
feel
may
like
have
a
silver mica
cheapskate
disease.
handling a funeral of a loved one, but you also can't
Here it
afford to
comes.
go broke either. You know, funerals are statistically the third largest expense in someone's life. The Pine Box sells the same caskets and funeral merchandise that is,
you know, shake hands, high five, give each other a hug.
That's why I do this long burn-in on these things, because they can work fine, and then after a while they start to deteriorate.
Oh my God, it's almost as bad as, holy cow.
So the question is would you rather be lucky or good? I'll take luck. So after all this work in here, I just couldn't face doing the silver mica disease on the transformers. So I thought, let me see if I can find out where the noise is coming from. And this is a really handy little guy, I must say. You can't really tell sound quality with it, but it gives you a signal. So IF cans are in here, and so what I thought I would do is, well, if the noise is coming from the IF cans, I'm going to try to pick it up as it comes, you know, into the IF transformer or into the detector tube. Okay, and I went and I did that, you know, just kind of give you an idea. So I got this thing set up to where I was able to hear the noise coming through the speaker with the volume turned all the way down and it's still crashing through. Hooked up to the first IF can output. It's not amplified yet, but I can hear a little bit of something there. And notably, I was hearing crash sounds coming out of here with no other audio signal, just the crashing sounds, but that was not coming out of here. So I surmised, okay, it's not coming from the first IF can. All right. So then went to the second IF can. I've got some amplification now. And I was hearing racket over here, you know, the crashing, but I could hear the program material here with none of that noise. So I've actually done is I've gone through both of the IF cans without the noise coming from those locations. So it's like, okay, let's track this down. So this is what goes to the volume control. And also not getting any noise. But what I did do is I then went on top of the speaker directly to these, and I heard the crashing. I came to these points, I heard the crashing. And then I came to this capacitor that comes over, you know, over into here. Basically what I did was I narrowed it down to it coming from the 50L6. So then I went over there and grabbed this stuff, just from fur, and I grabbed that 50L6 because it's hot, and I just gave it a little bit of a wiggle. First thing you'll notice is, where's the hum? I can barely hear it.
Things we have to accomplish and those sorts of things. And so
and this has been playing for a couple hours now with no crashing. So the problem was it's just dirty pin connections on the 50L6. So I need to clean that, but already we're doing much better. Now it's picking up again. But that's the 50L6 that's doing that. So let me adjust it, you'll hear.
And they have to achieve profitability, and that's not an awful thing. It's not a horrible thing. It's not something to be ashamed of. But you also have to calculate as part of all.
So I'm going to take this out and clean that tube socket. Boy, that's hot. That was touching. Okay, it's been a while now. That audio tube is, yeah, it's cool. You know, this 50L6 has been a lot of trouble on this radio. Alright, well, I'm just going to do a little cleanup on these guys here, and we'll get this thing going again. Alright, we got these pins cleaned up. This is measured, you know, in the question mark range. I may need to get myself another 50L6. I've got another couple of these and a couple other radios. You can see, maybe you can see how much filament evaporation there's been there on the top. Anyway, we can get this in and we'll see if it performs okay.
That wasn't such a big deal.
Okay, we'll let it play for a while and make sure it stays clear.
And next time it could be worse, especially for those 50 and older, or with a chronic condition like heart disease or diabetes. With an updated vaccine, you have better protection from COVID's worst outcomes. And that's a big... Find updated COVID vaccines near you at vaccines.gov. We can...
The most revolutionary and revealing area on the planet on Coast to Coast.
So that was from popping the 50L6, so it needs to be replaced.
And life-supporting measures had to be made on the field. He was taken off the field by ambulance. The coaches are still deciding whether or not to continue. A Houston woman is said to have been...
Well, that sounded pretty bad. Okay, so I went into my stash and found I do have a 50L6 that's not in another radio. And it looks awesome. I'm going to put this in. 120 volts. Oh, it's got a nice glow down at the base.
New York Cardinal Timothy Dolan is heading to Rome for the funeral of Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI. Funeral services will be on.
See if this one works better over time.
2008 and
You've also got 5 eastbound connector enclosure to 610 northbound.
Okay, so this is sounding really good with the other audio output tube. So what I'm going to do is, I'm thinking about working on the case a little bit. But before I do that, I thought it'd be nice to just kind of test fit it to see how it looks, so I'll know what things are worth doing and which ones won't make any difference. So I'm just going to do a test fit and see how it looks, and if I see any other problems, because I haven't had it back in there since I took it out a long time ago, I might add. Okay, let me just get this back in and then we'll take a look at it. Okay, I think this sounds pretty good. The dial does light up. You can't see it in the bright lights I'm using here, but it does light up. And I think the numbers that are here are kind of in gold, and they're backlit. It looks really cool. I think what I'm going to do is take the radio out and try to see if I can do some cleanup on this. It doesn't have much of a finish on it. I know it looks like it's shiny right here, but it isn't really. And I think I mentioned before, you know, somebody has kind of written 73 on this. You can see the finish is actually very dull. I may try to see if there's anything I can do. I can't really remove this or this because it's the kind of, you know, assembly method where they put something plastic through and then they melt it on the back side. So it's pretty much, you know, I'd have to break it to get it off. So, but I'm going to take this thing out and see what I can do about this. Another thing I want to do on this is that I'm really still not happy with the hum that we're getting in this. So there's some instructions in here about wire dress. I'm thinking about getting back in there and redoing some of the wiring in here. I know that sounds like a nightmare, but if I decide to do that, I'm just going to do it, and we'll see if it makes any difference. Hey guys, I think I'm going to stop part 3 here. As you can see, we got this thing kind of put back into the case, but I was just saying that I'd like to spend a little bit of time to work on the cabinet, and I would like to address the hum situation. So I'm going to stop this part here and break it off, and we'll pick that up in part 4 when it comes out. And I hope you stick around for that. And meanwhile, I appreciate you watching this one. It's been interesting, and I'll see you next time. Appreciate you watching. Thanks.